Chapter 37. Closing his eyes, he was right back there, all those years ago, the scent of coconut and red curls that lay strewn over her sketchbook. So grumpy, Grace's laugh cut through his brooding silence, where she'd caught him hovering over the page, casting shadows in her mind. You would be too, he snapped, if you lost something important. So? Grace gave a relaxed shrug, indifferent to the eye roll she felt from 87. Stop telling yourself you can't find it. Dad always said the mind's a funny thing. Doesn't like to be wrong. It overlooks contradictions. 87's expression fell. What an idiot. Of course, it was so obvious now. They create their own blind spots. A scotoma, while Mobius couldn't be censored, the mind observing it could, and regularly blocked vast amounts of data to protect itself, preventing the mind from becoming overwhelmed or crashing. Since that day, 87 had been searching for and correcting his old scatamus, while doing all he could to foster those of his peers, particularly around the source code, making sure it remained obscure, maintaining his edge. Although he still hadn't found it, he had come to see in far greater detail the things in Mobius that his old scotomas obscured. It had led him to several important discoveries about their past, as well as Mobius and the creative force behind it. He simply referred to it as what is, this intelligent, omnipresent energy which seemed to saturate both physical and metaphysical realms. Over the years, despite his growing frustration at not finding the source code, these revelations had become more frequent. They proved invaluable, helping him stay several steps ahead of his peers. It annoyed him more than a little, however, that they stemmed from someone he considered so inferior. No matter his advantage, she seemed to hold the keys. And no matter how many times he revisited the past, no matter how infallible his memory, he could not see where in her mind Morgan had hidden the source code. Despite that, he knew Grace had been the very first sample, one so important that both Morgan and Velda King chose to hide her. Grace was the only one of them, the only sample afforded a normal life. His mouth soured at the fact, continuing to page through the files Hobbs had given him, enjoying the feel of them between his fingers. In Mobius, sights and smells were far more vivid and intense, the experience all-consuming. You experience things as an intrinsic part of them, simultaneously, all at once, and in their entirety. In that moment, connected to everything, textures, colors, temperatures, and scents. The place where past and present overlay, saturating beyond the sheath of time. It was inarguably more efficient, informative, and engaging. Yet outside of Mobius, confined to his physical form and one place in time, the singular experience held a deeply touching and sentimental charm of its own. Part of the monster group, connected but individual, able to experience the unique on a personal and subjective level, which was ironically the one thing Mobius could not facilitate. He couldn't deny that after years of exploring it and overwhelming his senses, he'd developed an affinity for the delicacy of the physical, of being confined to particles that filtered information and interaction into a uniquely personal experience. Closing his eyes, 87 reluctantly injected back into Mobius. From there, connected to everything once again, he scanned the document in an instant, could see every sentence, feel every meaning, grasp both concept and intent through its author. The files detailed sample capabilities, following years of what some might consider horrifically inhumane litmus tests: submersion, air pressure changes, blood loss, trauma, and regeneration. Though now he and many of his peers had come to view them more as training. Training for a role no one had managed successfully and for which no empire survived. Their predecessors, too short-sighted and easily distracted, detached from real pain and suffering, yet consumed by it. The problem was, Hobbs was telling the truth, his version of it anyway. 87 could see he actually did want to find the source code to secure humanity's future, the version he deemed best. The problem was he didn't see samples as human and no longer felt the samples' golden handcuffs would suffice, given their growing abilities. He could see in Hobbs' mind he was searching for a backup, a kill switch to wipe them out. That's what he deemed to be in his own, and in humanity's, best interests. 87 had to hand it to him, despite the man's short-sightedness and lack of conscious access to Mobius. Hobbs was resourceful. He knew the source code would offer him that kill switch, and that 87 was his best shot at finding it. Moving his hand from the file, his thoughts drifted once again to Grace. Even though he hadn't found where it was in her, he could feel it changing him, bit by bit, after each interaction. His brow furrowed. There was one thing in these files that surprised him, however, or rather the lack of it. They showed no trace of Grace. No deleted files. Nothing redacted. It suggested that right from the start, before the samples were born, Morrigan intended to hide it. But if not from samples, then who? Others at Inter. From his own interaction with her, 87 had found her abilities, although inhibited, mimicked samples. She was able to navigate Mobius instinctively, as opposed to those who accidentally opened doors using drugs or other various methods and washed through. Sipping at his coffee, their last chat surfaced, lightening his expression. Those bright green eyes shone up at him as though he were some sort of hero. Who didn't like that? Alex, however, had noticed the change in him. His mouth soured. That would mean the other samples would have. More concerning, other than 106, the others hadn't mentioned it, which meant they were now watching him closely. As far as he knew, they were completely unaware of Grace's significance, of the source code hidden in her. But should they find out, there was no telling how they'd react, how they'd want to use her. They were already heavily divided on how best to proceed with Hobbs and Inter. Her discovery would only introduce a new set of problems, potential eventualities he didn't care to entertain. But if there were one thing that united the samples, it was their shared sense of pride, durable and incredibly delicate, making them utterly predictable. His mouth twisted, recalling the moment Grace inadvertently brought about that unwelcome revelation. Nonetheless, it made it easy to dissuade any serious discussion that such a source code for samples existed. They feared looking foolish. Sweeping thoughts of Grace under the dull and mundane, hiding her between scotomas, his thoughts drifted back through Mobius to settle on Alex. She'd stood in a packed tent, calling out Silas the night of the fire. His smile grew, watching her chastise the giant who towered over her. But rebels had caused quite the stir at Inter, and 87 had watched Hobbs use every ounce of it to tighten security controls and increase his budget. For now, it seemed, they were playing into his hands, the obvious reason Hobbs allowed the rebels to continue. But 87 sighed. He had little doubt their time was drawing to an end, especially if they began to target food and O2 credits as Alex had suggested. That was Hobbs' main form of currency in the Third, both inflatable and untraceable. But tomorrow's itinerary popped up, slicing through thoughts in Mobius with what was likely to become yet another thorn in his side. Layden Canning, their new head of intelligence, would be arriving. With a scowl, 87 shut down the projection of the young man it portrayed. He'd tackle that problem tomorrow. The guy wouldn't last a week. But right now, there was something far more pressing. 106, 87 whispered through Mobius to where she lay, fighting to ignore him. Her mind raged. He came and went on his own terms, with whomever he wanted. Today proved as much. Her eyes rolled off their blonde examiner. No loyalty, no respect. That much was clear as she'd been, that they should rise up, that this was their time. But no, nobody listened to her, not when 87 was in the way. The samples had made their bed, with this philandering arsehole no less. A lazy, good-for-nothing, self-righteous. "You make it sound so personal," 87 drawled. "You make it personal. You know we should be in charge. Not those morons, mortals." 87 corrected, leaning back on their delicate threads in Mobius. "So let them dress up in immortality and paint grand illusions of power. You know it's just a security blanket, their life being but a breath. Why argue over something so quick to perish?" Her lip curled back. He was all talk and no spine after all. "Philosophers forfeit life to talk about those who dare to live." She spat, her words fizzing out on the living tapestry where they float. "Or do they live a life others forever talk about?" Unmoved from where he rested, 87 winked at the salty expression that seemed to sharpen on 106. He could see she was in her kitchenette, her apartment on the floor above, banging pots and pans from where her thoughts wrestled with him and Mobius. "This is our time, and you know it. We've studied them long enough, outperformed them on every metric. We should move now. Overthrow them.